All right, good evening, everybody. We are here for a work session with the RE2 Woodland Park School Board. And tonight, all that is occurring is exactly what is on the agenda above you that is presented on the screens. And there's going to be some discussion. Council and the school board have had the opportunity to see the IGA that is being presented, and we've had some between our city attorneys of the red line language and language that we have, I think, agreed to. And I know that some numbers might get discussed, but other than that, this should be a short and sweet meeting. And there's also no public comment this evening. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to our city manager, and we're going to start with item number 1.
All right, good evening, everyone. Let's get it a little closer there. Here we go. All right, so in order to facilitate the conversation and dialogue on the 3 topic items, I have a little bit of background information on each one. So the 3 items we're going to discuss tonight are the adjustment to the city's retained costs for collection and administration, i.e. administrative fee, use of funds per the 2016 ballot language, and then a periodic annual reporting use of the funds. All right, so to look at the administrative fee, I'm going to give a little bit of background as to where this came from and how it was set up originally. So this administrative fee was set up in 2016 at $375 a month, which is $4,500 annually. And both in the city ordinance 1284 series 2016, which you all have in your packets there, you have the ordinance and the original IGA. And the original intergovernmental agreement, it basically says that net of the cost of collection and administration and subject to such other terms and conditions as will be contained in the intergovernmental agreement. Basically, the administrative fee can be amended at the discretion of the city. So under the original IGA, it says that the administrative fee shall remain in effect for a period of 5 years, at which time it will be reviewed and adjusted as warranted by the administration cost current at that time. So this is where we're coming up with the fact that it needs to be reviewed. Now on the next slide here, I give a breakdown of what it costs the city annually to administer the sales tax for the city. And that includes the 1.09% for the sales tax for the school district. So our total cost is about $100,000 almost exactly to administer this fee, and 26.67% of the total tax for the city is made up from the 1.09% for the school district. So we estimate it's about $26,788.95 to administer this fee in 2024. The city staff has recommended a 1% administrative fee based on the total sales tax collections, just a simple round number. That's where we picked 1%. And it is pretty close at 32,544, which is based off of the 3,254,000 that is projected for the 1.09% sales tax in 24. So with that, I will open that up for discussion.
Hold it down. Oh, yeah. There we go. Hi, my name's Brad Miller. I'm a lawyer for the school district. It's great to meet you guys. And by the way, thank you for those of you that were part of passing this tax and originally, the fact that you were thoughtful to kind of pass this along to people like me that drive from out of town and buy a donut at the donut mill was brilliant. And so thank you for that. Mr. Wilson and I have had some interactions around this and it's been, I think, cordial and thoughtful and equanimous or whatever the word is for that. We paused on this and asked Aaron originally, so we've been talking since the summer, quite honestly, if we could have just an understanding of what the delta was, and you guys have satisfied. So for our board, my understanding is they have a full-time employee that's dedicated to the sales tax collection process, and that's where they come up with the number. And then I asked Mr. Wilson if we could have further discussion about the 1%, which is a nice convenient round number, but it's maybe not an accurate number. And so maybe after this meeting, I'd like to talk with Mr. Wilson a little bit further and just sort of settle that question. But otherwise, thank you for this. It's been great.
You want to say how you come up with 1%?
The 1% was just the round number, and it's very close to what the actual cost is. That's how we came up with it.
Brad, when you say it's not a very accurate, or it's not an accurate number,
Well, it's about 20% high. I mean, it's a smallish number, but you're asking for your real cost is 26,000 attributed to us, and you're charging us 32
okay.
under this out calculation. So I'm just saying, hey, let's look at that a little bit more carefully. Just be sure we're doing this correctly.
But what I'm hearing is no conceptual objection to the, as long as we demonstrate costs. As here.
No conceptual objection
problem with that.
whatsoever.
Cool.
My very first email and exchange with you on the phone was, hey, we'd just like to know where this comes from.
Absolutely.
Right. And so we're there. So thank you.
I predicted this one wouldn't be. We'll start with a conflict.
So can I just chime in here for a sec? I get that it's off a little bit by 20%, but if we're gonna write this in for 5 years, we have inflation, so it could, at the end of the day, cost us more money to administer it 2 years from now than it does today. So that 1% would kind of balance that out in my mind.
Sorry, I'm not very good with any technology, including this. It's a great point, and that's the sort of thing where I just think we should take it offline and just sort of, engage on those sorts of things, but we're real close.
So on that same point, Jeff and Aaron, is this governmental agreement going to extend for another 5 years, or was just the first one 5 years? Do we have are you recommending a time frame for this particular IGA?
Well, the current agreement is in perpetuity. It's only this handling fee issue that's indicated in the agreement to be addressed every 5 years, and we kind of got behind schedule.
So then the answer is
But
yes, it'll go for 5
But
more
what's encouraging about this is when issues arise and we need to reopen this agreement, we can get together and talk about it and see what we can agree on.
Yeah.
We can't,
Would,
we're
well,
almost there.
my question is, even though this is going to be discussed offline to work out the details, and I address this to Mr. Miller, would you prefer a dollar amount every year or a percentage?
I think we can work towards a percentage. I mean, to the point just raised earlier, if the costs are going up, if inflation is going up, we're presumably collecting more tax. And so, that all the numbers will rise. And so if we get to a percentage, we're probably in a good spot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and I would suggest that oftentimes these kinds of things that have a length or a life longer than a year, it can be adjusted annually by an inflationary factor like the CPI. It used to be Denver, Boulder, Greeley, but it's different towns now. That might be a reasonable and a substantial or a verifiable number with which it could automatically increase based upon an inflationary factor that is documented by the demographer's office or by those that do those things, if you will. That would
Speaking on
be a-
behalf of the district, we're not looking for absolute precision. We
Sure.
just want to get to a close place and there's lots of points to be made, and I just think we're too big a group to make them. So I just would like to work with Mr.
And that's
Wilson to
fine.
get
It was just
settled.
a suggestion that is used for fees and different things like that. So
Thank you.
There's a
You're
lot,
Thank
welcome.
you.
there's a lot of available.
Right.
There's inflation escalators like the taper growth factors, and then there's that figuring out a percentage like that Brad's talking about. So it's lots of ways to skin the cat. And the
Perfect.
agreement in any case has to come back before both bodies in total for review.
Right, but oftentimes with council, the purpose of doing these work sessions is also to give staff guidance so that they can prepare something ahead of time for review. So if you have a recommendation or suggestion that you have in mind, I would appreciate if we could discuss it now so that we can give staff further direction to come back prepared.
So I wasn't presented with the calculations until I walked into the room tonight.
Okay,
And so I haven't had a chance to work with my folks, but my tentative presentation is 0.8%, 0.8%. And I think that would be justifiable, but let's talk it over. I've just looked at an escalation, and from 2017, when we were getting 2,100,000, we're up into the 3 millions. I mean, to the point of earlier, the tide is rising on that side of things as well. A percent seems like the right approach, and I'm suggesting 0.8.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, this actually works. That's kind of sad. Aaron, what percentage does the county charge the city for the collection of our property tax mill levy?
I believe it's 3%.
3%? So 1% is less than the county charges us now for collection of the mill levy.
Correct. We thought 1% would be very fair when we put this together.
I can say, I'm comfortable with the attorneys working that out, the final details. I think we're within a hair of being together on that, so. As myself, I'm comfortable with that proposition for the attorneys to finish that up.
You know, along those lines, this 26,000 number is something we could certainly work with. I would like to know a little bit more about the administrative fees, but I think we could all agree that we could put ourselves in that 26,000 range, and then the two of you would work out the minute facets of this. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
before we proceed, the draft IGA that we have in front of us tonight is not the same IGA draft that we've been working from for the last 6 months. What happened to that one?
I don't know.
I've been getting input from all sorts of people. Council. Thank you. Thanks.
They're on the agenda.
Early on, there was a lot of concern about potential expenditures and keeping track of potential expenditures that were not within the educational purposes. And and that was around litigation expenses primarily and post 2016 debt.
Yeah.
But as the conversation evolved, at least the message I got was that if we got to yes on the annual accounting piece and that the annual accounting was of sufficient detail, we could discover whether those sorts of things were occurring and deal with them at that time.
The other clause
So
Well, the
that
other-
provision was omitted from this draft where we just repeated all the educational purposes from the
ballot measure.
2016.
Jeff, what happened to the clause that included a per pupil distribution to the charter school?
That wasn't in my original.
Yes, it was.
That I wrote?
Uh-huh. Well,
Okay.
yeah, I got a copy of it, but I mean, we can
That
add
was
that
not
in.
the version I've ever seen.
Yeah, and I didn't.
Yeah, I mean, that was intentional in that first IGA draft is that we included the charter school as a recipient of the revenue, but if the consensus is to take that out, then I have no problem with that.
I apologize. I never got never understood the direction to put that in.
My question is.
Just to be clear,
Does some of the 1.09 go to the charter schools?
They're considered public school, yeah.
Right, so some goes to that, so why wouldn't?
so we have a statutory obligation on multiple fronts in terms, including the Charter Schools Act and recent, even just recent sort of legislation in the last 5 years or so that obligates us to at least give 95% of revenues to our charter schools. We can't exclude them under this agreement.
Yeah.
We're not able to.
And I'm not talking about the use of the money. In my mind, I'm still working on the reporting.
I think Councilmember Harvey's point was that it just wasn't specifically stated that they are a part of this in this IGA. And I think at some point, someone had recommended that wording at least get put in here.
Yes, I have it from the draft that was first socialized with the district, and it says the district agrees to provide the city with a detailed written accounting of how the proceeds of the city tax received in the preceding academic year spent by the district by July 15th annually. Such accounting shall show the allocation of tax proceeds to any and all charter schools in the district. And that was something that we wanted to make sure was stated, that the charter schools were in fact included in the receipt of the sales tax. But if Mr. Miller's telling us that that is not necessary,
I
by,
don't really
Yeah.
object to that. I was just saying that I hadn't seen that in any previous version that I'd received. But we do include them and we don't mind saying that.
yeah, I mean, that was intentional. We wanted to make sure that people understood this was not
Yeah,
an
thank
an
you.
attempt to exclude charter schools, the brick and mortar charter school that was authorized by the district.
Thank you very much. That's good.
Mr. Brad, just my thought, if you're willing to come up with the language that says you will include the reporting to include, you know, all the schools that receive funds, that's all. I'm voicing the citizens' concerns that I have heard.
Thank you.
I'm not here to establish how you spend it. They just want to know.
Hey,
Well, a
Rusty,
little
turn on
bit
your
you
mic.
are, but yes, yeah, I
No, no,
hear you loud and clear.
That's
Yes.
your sandbox to play in.
Mr. Witt, did you have any comments on this?
Yeah, I would just comment that when we break out the expenditure, we're happy to add a line that indicates the pass-through to a charter school. But the law requires us to proportionally distribute the money to all of our schools. That includes charter and non-charter, district-run and charter schools. So there is no risk or fear of exclusion of any Woodland Park school in this monies. In fact, we're very careful to get that right. And I will mention that historically, that was not necessarily done well, but we met with the CDE. We made certain that we had it right. And so everyone. is
And
satisfied.
I would also like to commend the Merit Academy on their published budget. They do delineate where their per pupil distribution was used.
Exactly according to the accounting that we sent as well.
Right. Well, the only place I saw it earlier this year was with the merit budget. I mean,
I can give you a copy of the email. You acknowledged receiving it.
if we want to go down that road, I will. I'm ready.
You
I
did
don't-
receive.
You know what? That's not what we're here for tonight.
Yeah,
Let's not do that. Okay.
So I have a question for both of our attorneys, if you don't mind. Can you hear it through there? Oh, Can you hear it through here? Good. So you start talking about adding things to what the intergovernmental agreement is and saying you don't mind adding the charter schools. My concern is what the citizens ordinance says, and the language in that says needs such as, and it lists the such as's. Once you start changing our agreement to be added words and language other than what the such as's are that the citizens put in the ordinance or in the initiative, then you start migrating to start to include and add stuff. Even from what I understand, and tell me if I'm wrong, the charter schools by state statute are already included. So you're adding it into an intergovernmental agreement, to me muddies the water and opens the door for further change and manipulation from what the citizens actually said. And I have a problem with that.
I've been looking for an opportunity to try to say Zulu Laga, so thank you for the question.
It's Zulu Aga, Zulu Aga.
Thank you.
So, Robert,
I fundamentally agree with you, and I am resistant to trying to promise some wordsmithing in this environment. I do want to work with Mr. Wilson on the final versions, and just broadly speaking, we're content with addressing that provision on the first page and then this paragraph 4 and talking about that. And that's what we hope to accomplish here with you, for sure.
Well, if we all acknowledge that the charter school that's been authorized in the district is obviously able to draw from that tax revenue as well. I would like to get an interpretation of any type of other school that might be authorized by the district, such as an online academy or a contract school. In my mind, I don't believe that the voters in 2016, and I was here in 2016 and was on council then, envisioned that money would be also distributed to other than the traditional charter school or the public schools.
I appreciate you probing. I don't think either of those sorts of things are anywhere in anyone's imagination, so I don't, but I'll tell you this, Ms. Harvey, we'll bring it to Jeff in the event that we had any expanded programs. I'll address it with your council and make sure that the city council has pre-knowledge, and we can talk about it at that point.
And it would be an opportunity with a requirement to come to council on an annual basis to report on the use of the tax, to say, this is something that's out there in the realm of possibility. Can we discuss this in a public forum or a public hearing and determine if it is appropriate? But the thought that another online school that's not, or a charter or a contract school that's not physically located within our school district was not something that I believe the voters intended to have that tax money used for.
We can imagine all sorts of different things that might happen, but neither of those are on the table.
Thank you.
And Robert, to respond to your question, I don't think that detailing in the report, the lawful expenditures already contemplated in any way limits what the voters approved in 2016. It's just showing the allocation.
And I'm fine with the, yeah, fine with that part.
Yeah, and Robert, I did listen to your concern, but there's a legal reporting requirement. And I'm gonna guess that the charter schools have a particular reporting requirement that may be different from the other non-charter public schools, or are the reporting requirements the same?
Well, it's a bit augmented in the sense that it's a building level, it's sort of more granular, direct, whereas the district, we report sort of more cumulatively across our different platforms. The charter contract we have has very sturdy accountability, components to it, in addition to what CDE, the Colorado Department of Education, requires. And so, yes, their reporting is incredibly robust. Yes.
And they are, just to augment that, they are subject to the financial transparency requirements that school districts are as well. So they have a financial transparency bug on their website with financial detail as well. So
And
yes, they
I
report.
have intentionally tried to shield myself from a lot of information, so I came in here unbiased. We have received, council has received just a boatload of emails, so I've read the emails. And that caused me to finally go out to your website and start reading, because they're saying we need better accountability. So I was expecting to see some very generic pie charts out on your website that talked about the budget. I found them to be very, very detailed. So
Thank you.
now I did not locate any charter, the Merit Academy's budget. It might be out there. If it is and it complies with the state, then I guess for the public that's listening to me as your council representative, what is missing that you're asking for? If you go out and look at the budgets, they're pretty damn detailed. If there's something that you think should be in a budget that's not there with the detail that exists, please send me an email. But that's the only thing I'm trying to understand is why the budgets as reported are inadequate, because I thought they were fairly adequate. So they need to.
Rusty,
detail.
what I have what's been shared with me by district members, district parents and taxpayers is if you, and I'll go ahead and broach this subject. But prior to the school district's budget hearing on the 14th of June, a voter emailed me as a council member this in 2023 and said there was the only way that they were going to be able as a taxpayer to review the budget was to go to the finance officer's office. And I think all of us know how difficult it is to get on the campus in the district. You don't just walk into somebody's office and say, show me the budget. And that concerned me. So I emailed the finance officer. And the finance officer did in fact send me a digital copy of the budget. And I was very appreciative. That was only, I think, 2 days before the June 14th hearing. I then thanked her for sending that to me, and she did it, very politely and very professionally. And I said, what I don't see, although I see the revenue stream from the sales tax, I don't see how that is going to be spent or how you propose that it will be spent for the 23-24 school year. And she sent me a graph that showed breakdown of the 5 areas that have been reported historically since the passage of the sales tax in 2016. That, it was never, that particular graph was never posted on the website. If it was, it disappeared very quickly. Again, she did the right thing. She sent me that particular graph, but she didn't send it to anyone else. She briefed it on the 14th of June, a very informative brief. But unlike the process we go through with city council, where over several weeks, we discuss the budget in public hearing and in work sessions, there was no public comment on the 14th of June. It was simply the consideration of the board directors. If that's their protocol, I have no argument with that. But what I'm saying is the concern that the sales tax dollars, let alone the mill levy dollars or any other source of income for the district is discussed. Our citizens, our voters wanted an accounting of how the sales tax was used every year. Traditionally, that's been briefed to the city council in a public hearing. And that's all I think many voters would like to see happen again, is that we just come back to those annual get-togethers similar to this and allow the school district to give us the good news story of how they're spending our tax dollars. So that's the concern. It's not, I am in no position to judge anybody's accounting abilities. I was very pleased that the CFO at the school district responded to my request for that one particular graph. But for her to give that to me is in no way suffices to say, this was the story for the public. That was simply a request I made as an individual, and she responded.
Councilmember Harvey, do you recall because I also asked for that same report.
Mhm.
So were we talking about, I don't recall, were we talking about it in council? Is that what caused both of us to initiate it?
No, a voter emailed me and she showed me, I have a
They-
copy of it. She
they-
showed me the notice that was put on the district's website that the secretary of the board had posted saying, you know, it's budget time of the year, and I'm paraphrasing. And
Sure.
if you want to see the budget, you got to come to the finance officer's office. And I just thought that an odd way to make a public dissemination of that information. So I asked for a digital copy of the budget itself. And she very, very politely and professionally and very promptly provided the entire budget to me. She did not provide the entire presentation that was given on the 14th of June, but she did give me that one particular graph. And in the last 3 weeks, that graph has been provided to the city council, and it is now posted on the school's website.
Well, my point that I'm trying to establish with you is that both of us requested that back in June.
Mhm.
Our role on council, at least from my reason for asking for it, was oversight to see in actual fact, this is what the ordinance says, this is what you're spending it on. And we both received that back then. When I looked at it, I went, oh, good, they're doing what they need
Mhm.
to. What you guys' accounting and reporting requirements are, isn't my concern from that standpoint, but you did, or the same, what was it, your CFO? She sent me the same thing. I'm going, oh, good, that's fine.
Mhm.
I didn't feel the need to take it any further because it satisfied everything that the ordinance says. So I'm curious why you had it same time I did that long ago, and now you're bringing it up as if it's an issue.
Actually,
And
actually,
I'm
no,
just,
it
I'm
was
confused to
insufficient.
understand that.
It was insufficient in terms of letting the public know how that money was spent. To say that a short budget summary on the 14th that had that one graph where no one asked the question about it and no public comment was allowed, that suffices to let taxpayers know how that specific tax was intended to be spent for the school year 23-24. Historically, since 2016, that's been a simple ask of the school district. Just please come to the city council in a public forum and let's go over it. And again, it goes back to what is the good news story of how you're spending our tax dollars? Because it is a good news story. And I have no intention of trying to repeal that tax unless we cannot be transparent and accountable on how it is spent. You may have got a one-page PowerPoint graph. I may have got a one-page PowerPoint graph, but nobody else did. unless they had a copy of the briefing. And as far as I know, the only folks that had that would have been the directors, as they should have.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and end that
Yeah,
dialogue
fine.
right now, because the whole point of number 2 is to say, hey, you guys produce a budget. You should be able to have a presentation. The IGA asks that you meet with us annually and do such a thing. You are in arrears of that presentation. Past is past. So from here forth, you have until July to present that to the council. We would expect that it be a detailed presentation of all the awesome things you guys are doing. We would expect that you would agree to come and present that, and that it would be more than a PowerPoint or pie chart, not PowerPoint, but more than a pie chart explanation of how the funds are being spent. And so all that dialogue is fine. And that's between constituents and you guys, and what Carol's not satisfied with and what you are satisfied with. But the whole purpose of the IGA too is that that the school board does agree to come annually and give us a presentation. Now, we haven't had that, but the IGA has been in place. So what the point of number 2 is, I believe, is that a thorough budget presentation be conducted. And I'm expecting that you guys all agree with that.
I'm going to say yes to you just immediately. And to some of the dialogue that's gone on before, we do have a fairly robust, because we're obligated to a robust budget adoption process, which goes through not just the final version in June of the year, which is the end of our fiscal year. We end in June, the end of June of each year. That's our end of our fiscal year. We start the budget presentation processes. Probably we've already done so, frankly. And in each iteration, the budget as it's being developed is published on our board docs, and it's very accessible, and they're on our website. So to that end, yes, all of those things. To this issue about the presentation, I think in some respects, there was probably a drop off due to COVID and then transition in leadership in the district and things like that. Because when I first came to the district as a lawyer, that wasn't a protocol. Under Mr. Witt and in conjunction with Mr. Wilson, we started to have dialogue about it. And frankly, it's probably on me individually misunderstanding what he was asking, because I understood the ask to be like a common board meeting. And I was a little bit frankly resistant to that because it has a lot of protocols. And I was wondering, could we have more direct dialogue? And so on me, if there was a confusion around that. But yes, we agree to the idea of a annual report. The July 15th date fits for us. It's we've got everything complete at that point. We can give you better than pie graphs. We can give you some real narratives around the wins that come with this. And let me just say, you know, as on an editorial side, it's so critical to our ongoing pungency as an educational entity that this money continue to be available. It's massively impactful on the way we treat our teachers and give, you know, raises and all this. It's critical for us. So we really do care tremendously about this. We'll do what we need to do for that. And having the dialogue with the city. Listen, I'm an outsider. I'm from down the hill, but I see how intimate this is and how important it is. We care about that too. We're going to do it.
And if I could just, in terms of getting good conceptual direction on where we go. And I also heard receptivity to Carol's request for the charter school documentation piece as well. That was originally part of this.
To
We will
put the
bring-
language
We
in.
will put that back in.
Thank you.
Mayor, I have one comment.
Sure.
As a former finance director in municipal government for 150 years, thank you. There's two
Took like a
things
day
that
over 90.
transpire from the financial world. One is a budget, which is a plan. The plan for the year's spending and the work plan for the year. Then there are audited financials. And I suggest that both are an important reporting document with regards to what your plan is and what the actuals turn out to be. So that would be much appreciated from my perspective to have both of those come back to, and it's not for the council necessarily to see, it's more for the public to see and an accountability from our end, from you all. And I think as partners, we can make that happen for the community.
I'm not competent to tell you exactly how that will work, but I
That's
hear
okay.
you loud and clear, and I agree conceptually that we ought to do that.
Thank you so much.
Mayor,
When was you, with all due respect, you say we were in the rears of coming together around this table to give a detailed report. If we're in the rears, when was the last time that the Board of Education and the City Council actually had that meeting? Because I being on the school board, and I understand it is in the IGA, I
That's right.
respect that, but when was the last time? I was never aware, no one brought that to my attention. I believe that COVID hit and it never got put back into the regular routine, but I find it offensive, sorry, that you point out that we are in the rears if this has not been a custom since I have been on the board, and I welcome the idea and I think it should be, but it hasn't been in the last 3 years.
Well, it wasn't just council's responsibility to initiate it either. It was also the school boards. It's in your contract with us to receive
I
the tax
understand that,
dollars.
but we
So
are a
anybody
working
could have
body.
initiated it at any moment. It didn't fall on any one particular person's shoulders. I've been on council for 6 years. My first year on council, the school board had a meeting. I was a part of that, but since then, there hasn't really been one. And there have been other concerns and
Oh.
COVID did occur. But technically, legally, we are in arrears for having the presentation.
I understand that, but prior to this board being elected in 2021, when was the last time that the Board of Education and the City Council?
Sue,
brought this to the table?
Sue, it was in 2019. And there was a very robust discussion at the last time that little get together occurred. Because there was discussion of sunsetting the tax at the
Yeah.
time, and the council was very, very adamant that no, that was not the intention, but for whatever reason, since 2019, those
Ms.
have
Harvey,
not occurred.
I
So-
think I think this discussion is perfectly well placed and I appreciate the pressure to do this. I think it rises all the tides. It's going to give you more gravitas around maintaining this and you know that you know what's happening what are the results. And so it's really important dialogue. So
I agree. Thank
we're
you.
there.
And Sue, what I heard is not trying to put a blame on anybody or point fingers. It's okay. Sorry. Okay, so this wasn't happening in the past. And what this meeting is all about is making sure going forward. So it's not for
It's not
you
the
to go
blame
home
game.
and feel guilty about, but let's make sure we're moving forward in an appropriate way,
Right.
taking responsibility, taking accountability for this and ensuring it doesn't happen again.
I think
Yeah.
we're,
I would just like some communication from both sides of the table. We are. both-
Absolutely.
We are
Well,
all responsible.
and we all agree around this table that some things that have happened in the past weren't intentional.
Right.
And it was what it was, but I think we've also agreed that we're gonna start from this point on. It appears to be unified agreement that we will proceed from here and rectify some of these
Yes.
issues.
And I would agree that it belongs in the past. Yes, let's look forward.
And
and not talk
difficulty
about
that's
it
going
anymore.
to-
Let's
the
just make it
difficulty that's going to come though is now council's turning over. And then once council finally gets established, then you guys turn over again. So someone has to be at the helm of understanding what this agreement says. And the city attorneys, if they stay, we had new city attorneys come in. We've had 2 new city managers since I've sat on council in 6 years. So it's a matter of us bringing it up when we recognize, but it's also a matter of the principals who are retained and maintain to recognize that there's an obligation amongst all of us to get together and do this. And it's got to be the people like our attorneys who stay
Staff.
and staff, because we don't stay as elected officials and we can't keep on it for the new officials. So we're hoping that the staff and attorneys and the people that do get to stay, that's part of doing this over again and meeting again and saying, hey, we've had this thing, it's not been functioning well, we need to get it back on track. Let's get that done. And that's why we're here today.
And that was precisely my point of my comment.
Right.
Well, we've got this new, this renewed relationship taking place, so maybe we can help.
Absolutely.
If there's a transition and we can help one another, because the same thing happens with us.
Absolutely.
Would it
On
be,
alternating schedules.
Right.
would it be helpful for us to schedule a annual recurring meeting? So that it's on the books regardless of who is sitting in these chairs? It's just kind of a well-established,
And I
at
think-
this time,
I
we
think
have
that's
this
how it
meeting.
used to be. We had an established annual.
Well, actually, it was quarterly
Quarterly.
breakfast. which
Yeah, it
were-
was
were
that's
anytime you
right.
got bacon and ham.
Right.
But this IGA does establish at least the fifteenth of July as a report, an annual reporting requirement. But I would say go beyond that because there's so many other mutual interests and concerns that we have as a community, to include facility management. You know, we have an MOU now with the school district on the use of the aquatic center. Does that need to be updated? There are a lot of things that we should discuss at a minimum biannually, but this IGA, as the mayor has pointed out, will be the cornerstone for any new group that comes in on either for the board or for the council. So
Yeah.
let's just make sure we iron this out now and then go forward.
So can I get back to Kelly's point to some extent with the audited? My thoughts were actually to amend the IGA to, rather than just say you're gonna come July 15th, that we have a scheduled work session before the budget is adopted. And then you bring us the audited budget as the presentation. But those are just my ideas, because once you bring it to us and it's audited, we really don't have a say in it. Or once you bring it to it and it's adopted, we really don't have a say in it.
The audited item is actually the financial statements. Budget is adopted by the board, and that's usually at the beginning of the year, so that it creates the work plan for the year. And then at the end of the year, the audit firm comes in and audits the actuals and prepares an audit report with an opinion. And so they're two separate documents and for two separate purposes. And I think they're both important information that we share and we glean great, what the great things are we did and maybe some things we could improve upon. So those are great documents to help us do a better job.
My suggestion is that we commit to a July board-to-board gathering where we will present both the good news, but the planned budget and in the sort of format that we need to. We tend to get our audit reports in late January, early February. That's when they come back around. And I'm confident that we'd be more than willing to provide that document, but I don't think that we're right yet at a place to start to build more meetings together.
No.
I got to defend these guys. They meet too much already as, volunteers. And I don't know how huge your salaries are, but it's probably not worth it either. So,
I think just
So,
providing the
let's-
report to us would be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
They
We'd
are
be grateful.
posted on our
I mean,
website.
providing a report to us and the public would be
Absolutely.
would be
So are ours.
sufficient.
Thank you, Ken.
And I just have one clarification because I want to make sure when we leave here that the citizens that have written asking us council members to pursue certain things get what they've asked for. When you give the budget, what I noticed is unlike our 410 fund, which has a 1% that goes straight in, and then that 1% is tracked exclusively, that 1%, because it goes to the 410. I didn't see in your budget that your 1.09 comes in and is tracked. It just becomes a blended dollar amount. And did I misread your budget?
So we have a general budget that we publish as a general matter, and then we did the report that Ms. Ryan provided last summer to, that was a breakout and more specific to this. And we're willing to both bring that and talk about it in that July meeting. That's what I'm proposing that we do.
Okay, and I'm trying to be crystal clear on what I would like to see for the citizen is that 1.09. If it's tracked individually, just show how that is. How you spend all the other money, I assume it just gets all blended, so it would be a little bit difficult to track that 1.09 if even possible. But
It does get blended, and that's when we allocate it
But I-
according to the expenditures from the relevant funds.
okay,
We try to give you a percentage to show that this is how it would break out. But we don't tag every dollar that happened to come from that source and try to
Correct.
find it to the end. That would be an onerous burden.
That's what I thought. So if you could somehow generically show the public how that 1.09 ends up in the buckets that then gets blended with some other money and then is spent, I think that will accomplish what they're asking for, at least what I'm willing to support what they're asking for, is just to kind of generally track that 1.09.
Rusty, you know, as, I guess, simple as that, PowerPoint graph was that was provided both to Robert and myself in June. It did break down by category as laid out in the ballot initiative, by dollar amount and by percentage. And that's the way it was historically reported to the council since 2016. Above and beyond that, you know, if they were to break it down the way that we break down the 401 fund, that would be pretty onerous.
Terrible.
Yeah.
For them to have to do that. So again, public, if there's something you want different, you're gonna have to lay it out. Think of me as a 6-year-old or a 10-year-old, make it real simple what you're asking for, because if they comply with what I think I've asked and conveyed, I think we will hit the mark on what the majority of you have asked for without it's overstepping what you're saying, adding things that are not there, caveats in there, playing in their sandbox. We don't, or we should. Thank you.
I just want to share that, in my time as a bean counter, I used to audit school districts and I don't know if the council is, and the public is aware, but the chart of accounts and the accounting and their budgets are mandated by the state. And every school district that you look at or charter school has the same structure in their budgets, and those accounts and those different classifications and groupings are mandated by the state, and every school district follows that. So just so you know, we do ours as we like to see it, and we account for them in specific fund types, but we have the luxury of defining what those look like. The school district does not, because their chart of accounts and their accounting is mandated to the number, to the line item. So I didn't know if you all knew that. I just wanted to share that.
So I think this is a perfect example as to why if you come to council and give a presentation, lots of rumors, innuendos, and substance can be answered and put to rest. So what I'm hearing is you guys are willing to come in July?
Yep.
Okay, so,
I would suggest,
So can I,
can I respond to that?
sure,
We're willing to come by July. I would suggest we come prior to July.
that would be
Remember
wonderful.
that school districts
Sure.
actually close in July. and everything
Yes.
gets-
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if at all possible, May would be a better time.
I don't know. I think July's.
That's what made very, very good again.
Right, yeah, the paid vacation, so
so
that's, good. So let me just,
Do you guys get vacation when you're with your packet?
let me just double check with
With pay.
Jeff, do you have anything further? Okay, council, anything further?
on,
Okay,
Do something?
Aaron, anything further?
yeah, I have a
Board, anything further?
few things.
You're welcome. Yes.
I'd
I had
like
a
to
few
thank
things.
you all
What,
Thank
for the
you.
conversation.
Is it possible for you guys to actually come before council and present the current budget so that we can maybe put some people's minds to rest and then start fresh with the new one in July or May, whatever that may be, so that we can try to stop the rumor mill?
We'll explore that. I want to make a point, kind of to Kelly's point perhaps, but let's be clear here. We're not waiting for the council's approval of our budget.
Right.
We're going to present that. I just want to be,
I
make
totally
sure I
understand
bounce
that.
that one.
No, I
Okay.
understand that. I'm
Okay.
just saying,
And let's look into that, and I'll respond to Mr. Wilson and Aaron and try to see if we can do that. I think that makes sense. I just want to make sure I'm not sort of burdening somebody that I don't think that I
But-
don't know what I'm doing.
but
So
to-
I'll try my best on that.
To that end, you make a very good point. We're not asking you to come and present your budget, your proposed budget for the next school year, we're asking you to share with us how the 1.09 is spent.
You guys have been great about saying it that way. I just wanted to sort of say, you know, for our community and so forth, to make sure that we were clear about that. Thank you.
Good meeting. Thank you all.
Thanks all.
Anything further?
Are we going to talk about MOUs or?
I asked our city manager if he wanted to discuss that, and he said he would like to have that discussion in the future, so.
Okay.
All right, then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for coming.
Are we gonna sing Kumbaya at all?